The electric chair was supposed to be a modern, civilized form of execution, a clean, scientific alternative to the gruesome methods of the old world. Supporters promised it would be swift, painless, and humane, but the reality was far different. An inmate about to be executed in Florida will likely be burned and tortured during that execution, will be conscious during the event, and will suffer pain. This was the appeal filed by the legal team of Jesse Tafero. The appeal was denied and he was executed. During the ordeal, he suffered for 7 minutes as 6-foot flames rose from his head. This was in 1990. Almost 100 years after the invention of the electric chair. Time and time again, its claims of a quick, clean execution had been disproven, yet it remains in use even today. Welcome to the infamous past, where we will explore the darkest history of the electric chair in America. For most of human history, executions were brutal, drawn-out affairs. Hanging was the most common method in the United States. Simple, cheap, but often unreliable. If done incorrectly, the condemned could take several agonizing minutes to die, strangling slowly as the noose tightened around their neck. Some states used firing squads, beheadings, or even burnings in earlier centuries. But as the 19th century progressed, reformers sought a method they considered more humane. That's where electricity entered the picture. The first electric chair was designed by Dr. Alfred Southwick, who conceived the idea after witnessing a worker die instantly from electrical shock after falling into a generator. The chair worked by delivering a high-voltage electrical current through the victim's body, using electrodes attached to the head and leg. When done correctly, the intense electrical surge stops the heart, causing instant death. A wet sponge soaked with salt water was also placed in between the victim's head and the electrode to help ensure reliable conduction of electricity. The electric chair played an important role in what was known as the War of the Currents, a fierce battle between rival inventors Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse over whether direct current or alternating current would be the electrical current to power America. Edison championed direct current, while Westinghouse promoted alternating current. AC was more efficient for long-distance transmission, but Edison saw an opportunity to discredit it. He launched a smear campaign, claiming AC was far more dangerous, and to prove his point, he began publicly electrocuting animals. Stray dogs, horses, and even larger animals were killed using AC, with Edison hoping to instill fear into the public. One of the most infamous cases was Topsy the elephant, killed at Luna Park in 1903. Topsy had killed a drunken spectator, and Edison's team saw an opportunity to showcase AC's lethality. Before a large crowd, Topsy was fed cyanide-laced carrots and then electrocuted, her body collapsing as smoke rose from her feet. The event was filmed, solidifying AC's association with danger and death. This sensationalized campaign paved the way for the electric chair's invention. New York State sought an alternative to hanging and, in 1888, commissioned its use. The first person to be executed in the chair was William Kemmler, convicted of murdering his wife with an axe. On August 6, 1890, he was the first of many to face the electric chair. It did not go as planned. The first jolt of electricity failed to kill him. Witnesses watched in horror as Kemmler's body twitched, convulsed, and groaned, still clinging to life. The executioners scrambled to administer another charge, and this time it worked, but the ordeal lasted 8 minutes. The smell of burning flesh filled the room, and some witnesses reportedly tried to leave. Despite the horrific failure, the electric chair was declared a success, and states soon adopted it as their preferred method of execution. Infamous executions. Far from a civilized form of execution, the electric chair condemned hundreds to a slow, agonizing end. Victims erupted in fire and smoke, and eyeballs erupted from their sockets, yet the chair's use continued. One of the most infamous executions was that of Ruth Snyder in 1928. Convicted of murdering her husband, she was sentenced to death at the infamous Sing Sing prison. But what made her execution infamous was not the crime, it was the secret photograph taken of her death. A journalist for the New York Daily News strapped a small camera to his ankle and snapped a picture just as the electricity surged through her body. The next day, the image appeared on the front page with the headline, "Dead." The spectacle of the execution shocked the nation, but the electric chair remained in use. Perhaps no execution was more widely anticipated than that of Ted Bundy, a notorious serial killer responsible for the deaths of dozens of women who terrorized the United States for 4 years. By the time he was executed in 1989, the electric chair had already become controversial. But for Bundy, there was little sympathy. Crowds gathered outside Florida State Prison celebrating his impending execution. Some sang and danced, while others set off fireworks when the switch was flipped. The execution went smoothly, but the event underscored the chair's place in public spectacle, like the hangman's noose before it. But not all executions were successful. One of the most horrifying cases was that of Willie Francis, a teenager convicted of murder in Louisiana. In 1946, at just 17 years old, he was strapped into the chair. The executioners pulled the switch and electricity raced through his body, but he survived. The machine had been set up incorrectly, and though electricity surged through his body, it did not kill him. Instead, he convulsed, screamed, and begged for help. He was returned to his cell, but his ordeal was not over. A year later, Louisiana executed him properly, the first and only known case of a failed electric chair execution followed by a second attempt. The decline of the electric chair. From the very beginning, people fiercely debated whether the electric chair truly was more humane than hanging. The gruesome failures only further fueled the controversy. Reports of prisoners screaming, convulsing, and catching fire raised ethical concerns. Some medical experts argued that the condemned remained conscious longer than officials admitted, meaning they might have experienced excruciating pain before death. As the 20th century came to a close, the electric chair began to fall out of favor. States began shifting toward lethal injection, which was, like the electric chair before it, considered to be humane. The demise of the electric chair began with the execution of Allen Lee Davis in 1999, convicted of murdering a pregnant woman and her 2 children in Florida. His execution was especially gruesome. His face turned deep purple, and blood poured from his nose onto his shirt. The disturbing images from his execution only hastened the decline of the chair, as many argued it was little more than state-sanctioned torture. Today, the electric chair is banned in most states, but some still allow it as an option. In places like Tennessee, prisoners can choose electrocution over lethal injection, though they rarely do. The last known execution by electric chair occurred in 2018, when Edmund Zagorski was executed in Tennessee. Though its use has faded, the electric chair remains one of the most notorious symbols of capital punishment in American history. It was meant to be a scientific breakthrough, a modern method of an ancient practice, but in the end, it became known not for its efficiency, but for its many horrific failures and brutal legacy. Today, the electric chair has been largely replaced by lethal injection, a method also once believed to be humane and painless. But like electrocution, this was far from the truth. Botched executions have left prisoners to suffer lengthy deaths, with some lasting as long as 3 hours before they finally succumb to the deadly cocktail of drugs and chemicals. Some experts argue that lethal injection only seems painless because the victim is paralyzed, masking the pain instead of eliminating it. Despite its many failings, the electric chair remains in use today, confined to only a small number of American states. As debates over capital punishment continue, one truth still remains: whether by noose, electrocution, or injection, state executions remain as controversial as ever. And for as long as they occur, people will ask the question, does an eye for an eye make the whole world blind?